So we heard from Dalip saying energy is not going to be targeted. What is it going to take? What does Vladimir Putin need to do? Troops are surrounding Kiev for the administration to hit him where it's going to hurt the hardest.
Well, I think we are hitting him where it hurts the hardest, because the goal for sanctions, to make them as effective and as successful as possible, is basically two elements. One is to make it as global and multilateral as possible, and the second is to make sure that you're hitting the target, in this case Putin, harder than and mitigating the risk for ourselves, the American economy, and the global economy. And I think that's what we did here.
Sanctions may act as a punishment, but it's clear that they have failed, still failing at this moment, as a deterrent. What kind of deterrent is the U.S. ready to potentially put on the table?
Well, I think that it's a bit too early to say what has succeeded and what has failed. This is not about a deterrence. This is about the fact that we're sending a message. If you invaded Ukraine, which he has now done, launching missiles into cities for no reason whatsoever, and punishing the entire population of Ukraine, and committing this kind of war in Europe for the first time since World War II, that there's going to be consequences for this. I think it's a bit early to say if sanctions have failed or succeeded when it's been barely 24 hours.
But they did fail in the sense that we've been here before with Putin many a times, 2014 most recently, and he's still making inroads into Ukraine. But on oil and gas, the United States has no problem sanctioning Venezuela, oil and gas, no problem taking Iranian barrels off the market. When can we ever potentially see Russia seriously on the table?
Well, I think that the goal of the sanctions is to hit Putin as hard as possible while mitigating the effect on the U.S. economy and Europe. And I think that comparing this to 2014, and as you know, I was in the administration in 2014 when we imposed the sanctions. We have a lot of members of our team that were there in 2014. We have a lot of experience in what worked, what did not. These sanctions are significantly harder and harsher and more international and multilateral on Putin than we've ever done before. Definitely more aggressive than 2014. But at the end of the day, Annmarie, if we target the oil and gas sector for Putin and Russia's, in this case, the Russian energy establishment, then prices would spike. Perhaps he would sell only half of his product, but for double the price. That means he would not suffer the consequences, while the United States and our allies would suffer the consequences. That is not a win. That is a fail. What we are doing here is going after the largest banks, and even though there is a mechanism here to allow for continued energy transactions, it's going to be harder and messier. It's going to be difficult to transact with Russia on a broad basis. They need to raise money to continue their additional investments into oil and gas for their future growth. They have their natural declines anyway. So we are trying not to affect today's global oil and gas, but this will clearly have impacts for the future of Putin's energy
and that's fair.
Complex.
VTB and Sberbank are massive. I don't know if the U.S. audience quite understands how big these banks are. When it comes to the natural gas story, if Putin starts to play politics with natural gas, which he did a little bit last year, where are we in terms of flows or potential tankers from Qatar that were supposed to go to Japan but actually diverting themselves to Europe? Is that still in the works? So
first, yes. And what we've been able to do over the last few months is we identified what Putin was doing in targeting European energy security already 5-6 months ago. He cut supplies down to contractual levels only. He reduced his supplies through the pipeline from Ukraine, but also through other pipelines.
Today, even on the Ukrainian grid, up 35%. As opposed to yesterday.
Yes, so we are still seeing flows, and we'll take as much flows as possible from Russia. We want to make sure what we've been able to do as the United States is, as you said, we had a global campaign working together with our allies in Europe as well as Asia and other producers to divert cargoes that were intended for Asia to go to Europe. That has enabled, thwarted what Putin was really trying to do, which was to time the invasion with rolling blackouts or economic distress in Europe. That was not achieved. We were able to thwart that, and there's enough natural gas supplies to get through the winter. We now have to make sure that there is enough for the spring and into the summer.
Just finally, I want to end on, you were recently in Saudi Arabia. What is your message to the kingdom in the sense, or what did you receive in terms of, are they going to be able to help quell the price of oil prices? Is Saudi Arabia going to be able to put barrels on the market?
Well, look, we're trying to message three basic things. As of today, there is no disruption in oil supply through Ukraine as a result of this war. Number two, the sanctions will not target the oil flows as we go forward. And number three, that the international community, producer and consumer, are prepared to take action. We have prepared for this moment.
But prices are still elevated.
Prices are elevated, Annmarie. They were at 108 or 9 yesterday. They're down again today. We've brought the prices down to 98. I think the prices, now that the market will absorb that the risk factor in the market is lower, we can see prices go down from here. I can tell you we are very well coordinated with both producers in the Middle East as well as with consumers around the world.